1. There was an asshole captain, we'll call him Captain B for short. Captain B was captain of a tanker that would give jet fuel and diesel to Navy ships while at sea. We call it underway replenishment. Captain B was known to verbally berate crew and call people out by name on the PA system. Think of it like an announcement system that goes throughout the whole ship. And tell them Bob fucked this up, Jack was really slacking today and lazy, Jill majorly fucked up this other thing. The tanker B was captain on was operating for a while out of Subic Bay, Philippines. The ship would come in and load fuel, and then go out to the South China Sea, Taiwan Strait, wherever. The crew always liked going to Subic Bay because they could get delicious meals, beer, drinks, sit at the beach, party, whatever. And all for pretty cheap with the exchange rate of the Philippine peso. One day, Captain B got an idea. He would punish the crew by not allowing them to go ashore in port, presumably for their poor performance. Now, all employees at this company are governed by a union, and we have a contract. Within the contract, it clearly states that if the crew are not allowed to go ashore, they will receive penalty pay for each hour they are restricted to the vessel during their non-working time. There are certain exceptions, like if the country is way too dangerous with terrorist attacks, liberty can be restricted. But for the most part, the crew must be granted liberty while in port. There is no way that Captain B didn't know of this rule, because there are all kinds of verbiage that say how to post the sailing board, when people must be back by, etc., etc. Captain B announced that there would be no liberty as a punishment to the crew. He was even smart enough to put it in writing. Instead of becoming upset, the whole crew got a smirk on their face and money in their eyes. The mood at dinner was spectacular. Everyone was pre-counting their money and trying to decide what to do with it. Should I pay off the rest of my car payment? Blow it at the strip club? Take a side trip to some other city? So the punishment lasted one night. The next day, the ship had loaded the fuel and pulled out. Captain B even tried to deny everyone's penalty pay. The very next day, US time, when the office was back open, Captain B got a panicked call from his superior.
"What the fuck are you doing? Let the crew go immediately! Do you have any idea how much budget you just wasted?"
The thing is, for most of the crew, their penalty pay is the same as their overtime rate. So instead of knocking off at 5 p.m. and going into town, the crew still stopped working at 5 and just went back to their room, or the gym, or whatever. Then they got paid from 5 p.m. to midnight, 7 hours, and then from midnight to 8 a.m. the next day. That's 15 hours of overtime for the entire crew. Some guys who stand watch were on a different schedule, and got even more money than that because their shift ended at noon, 4 p.m. or whatever. In fact, people that normally would have worked overtime in the evenings didn't because they were getting paid anyway, so why work? A week later, the ship pulled back into the Philippines and everyone went out on the town and threw a huge party and did toasts in the captain's honor. He essentially gave everyone drinking and partying money while trying to punish them. Captain B even stood in the gangway and glared at people leaving the next in port. And one guy even said, "Hey Cap, can you punish me again, please? Thank you so much!" Captain B wasn't even held responsible for any of his actions that day, and didn't get into any trouble whatsoever, besides getting berated verbally by the class manager. He ended up fucking himself a few years later, though, when one of his many sexual harassment complaints came back to bite him. He was fired with cause for sexually harassing a younger female. 2. This happened when I, male, was a freshman at a small college toward the beginning of my first semester. I had a rather uncomfortable incident with my former roommate, also male. Nothing sexual or violent, but the story itself isn't really relevant. I was the initiator and at-fault party in the incident, though it was unintentional. My roommate was extremely pissed at me. I apologized profusely, as I felt bad and didn't mean to cause an issue. After our classes, we talked it out, and he said that he believed it was unintentional and that he forgave me. What I didn't realize at the time is that he had already reported me to the college before we fully made up, which he told me after he forgave me. Things were pretty awkward between us over the weekend. I stayed with a friend to give my roommate some space. I wasn't contacted by the college, so I assumed he had reached out and told them that we settled the issue. Everything changed that Monday. I received a call while in class from Student Life directing me to call back immediately and setting a meeting for discussion and review. I met with them multiple times over the following days, but at the end of it, I went basically unpunished due to a lack of evidence for any consequences from the college. My roommate and I were on fine terms, and I had the college off my back, so I thought I was basically done with the issue. However, I was then called into a meeting with my roommate and a Student Life employee, where I was told that my roommate was no longer comfortable living with me. This caught me off guard because things seemed okay between us, but I suspected that he told his parents what happened, and that they were encouraging or forcing him to stop rooming with me. By this point, I had spent hours trying to rectify the issue with the college and my roommate, so I was pretty mad that the meetings were continuing and no one was moving on. In the meeting, my roommate asked me to move out of the room since I had caused the issue, but the college employee told me that they have a policy that they cannot force anyone to move out of a room. Like I mentioned, I caused the issue, but I was pretty mad at this point, so as kindly as I could, I refused to move out of the room. Both my roommate and the employee aggressively urged me to move, but I cited their own policy, that they had just started, that I could not be forced. If my roommate no longer wants to live together, he can solve that by being the one to move. So the next day, he was gone. I then had a room to myself for the foreseeable future, although the college told me that someone else could be moved in at any time. At the start of the second semester, the same Student Life employee who I had met with emailed myself and a handful of other students, an even number, in my building without roommates, informing us that we had to consolidate. We were given a deadline if we wanted to be proactive and make arrangements to move in with a specific person. I didn't know anyone on the list, so I waited to be randomly assigned, hoping that the new roommate would be willing to move into my existing room. The deadline came, and I was assigned to live with someone new. I met with the guy for lunch. He was sitting when I walked in, but he quickly revealed to me that he was partially paralyzed and therefore had to live on the first floor. I lived on the fourth. So obviously, if I lived with him, I would have to move out of my room. Of course, I immediately remembered the college policy that they could not force anyone to move out of their room. So, cue the malicious compliance. I told the guy that he seems like a great roommate, and that it was nothing personal, but due to this policy I simply would not be moving to his room, which would benefit us both. The deadline to move came, and all other students needing to move had already done so. So this was the only option for me to get a roommate at this time. I didn't notify the college that I wouldn't be moving. I just didn't move. I started getting emails from the employee almost daily demanding that I move, to which I replied citing the conflicting policy that they cannot force me to do so. The college threatened to charge me double for occupying a double as a single, but I repeated their own policy back to them again, and again told them that I would be happy to consolidate by having someone move in with me, but that it was not my fault that the guy they paired me with was not able to move to a higher floor. Eventually they gave up, and I ended up keeping my own room for the rest of the year. 3. So I was in a speech class. It was my last semester, completely online due to COVID. Our professor assigned us a group speech that we were to record and send to him by the due date. I thought it would be easy enough, as he gave us 2 weeks to work on it, and group speeches weren't anything new to me. He even made separate discussion boards for our groups that we could use to communicate. This project was worth 30% of our grade, so failing this project meant you would pretty much fail the entire course. I wanted to get it done early so we wouldn't have to worry about it, so I immediately posted a message to everyone in the group asking when they were free to do a Zoom meeting to discuss the project. No reply for a few days by any of them. I then post again. This time a little more stern, as it didn't seem any of them cared enough to even reply at all. I waited a few more days. At this point, we only had a week left before it was due, so I just divided up the work and posted what everyone would need to write their portion of the speech about, and gave them a date and time that I would be holding a Zoom meeting for the final recording to send to the professor. Still no reply. It was now the day before the speech was to be recorded and 2 days before the speech was due, and my group members had not made an attempt to make contact in any form at all. So I did the only thing I could think of and emailed my professor explaining the situation. But I assumed he would not reply because throughout the entire semester, it took him over a week to reply to any emails I had sent him. I then did the entire group project on my own, which took me the entire night with no sleep. After I finished writing everyone's speech, it was around the time I had scheduled the Zoom meeting to record. I joined it out of amusement, knowing nobody in my group would be there. Sure enough, it was empty. So I did the entire speech myself. But the rubric really put emphasis on transitioning to our other group members, including saying their name. So between every section where it would cut to a different member, I would say something like, "And now, Rekmi Senpai, my name, will explain the importance of blah blah," then mute my screen briefly, as if to add a cut, put on a different hat, and continue with the speech. I did this for all 6 portions of the speech. I turned in the speech shortly after and filled out the group member roll sheet that was due as well. I just put my name in every box that was supposed to be a different member. A week passes, and I see he graded the project, still not replying to my previous email about the situation, by the way, and he gave me a 0 stating it was supposed to be a group project, and me doing it solo meant I did not follow instructions. I was actually infuriated by this, and knew that emailing him about the grade was as good as useless. So I went straight above him to the board of the college and explained to them what happened. They apologized, and said the situation would be resolved within a few hours of me talking to the board. He had replied to my email 3 times stating that he was sorry for the miscommunication about the project, and that my grade would be corrected. Scolded me for going above him, saying I should have just emailed him again if I couldn't get in contact with my classmates, and putting the blame on me for not trying harder to reach out to them. The next semester, I saw that he was no longer with the school. My guess is that it was a habit of his to not reply to emails and he got fired for it. Also, his corrected grade was a 70, but I was so mentally exhausted from the situation at that point that I didn't care to fight it anymore. And if you're wondering, my classmates blew me off to go ghost hunting rather than working on the project. 4.
I need you to break down these giant concrete blocks in the blazing hot weather.
Which weren't his exact words, but that was essentially my job description for a week while working on a construction site. There were these 2 gigantic concrete blocks that were poured to hold up the site's security cameras, and holy fuck was that a bad idea. They could have put stakes in the ground, used sandbags, or just used a really wide frame, but no, giant concrete blocks was the plan. And now that the job was nearly done, and I was on the bottom of the pyramid of this job, I was the one who needed to destroy them. Now, I did everything I could to make this easier, like try and find an effective method, break off big pieces at a time, or try to talk my boss into using expanding grout. You know, the stuff that's meant for breaking concrete. But he was having none of it, and just told me to pull up my bootstraps and do it. Here's the thing. There were 3 reasons in particular why I wanted to make it easier, each alone enough to justify a different method. 1, it was going to be 30+ degrees Celsius for the next week, 90+ Fahrenheit. That might not sound bad, but for a northerner who's used to cold weather, it was like working in the Sahara. 2, the blocks were reinforced with microfibers. This means they don't fall apart in chunks. Cracks may form, but the fibers will hold it together, meaning I'd need to chip it away in little bits at a time, meaning more effort and more time. 3, the chipper I had was tiny. Like this thing was meant for tiles or bricks, not giant blocks of concrete. This also meant it didn't have effective shock absorbers, so pretty much all the force would be going directly into my arms and particularly my wrists. Now, I'm not a big burly guy like a lot of the other guys on the site, so while this would be bad for any of the other guys, it was doubly so for me. I'm pretty fed up with my boss as it is. He's aggressive, lazy, and has little to no regard for my well-being. But unfortunately for him, neither did I. I'm better now, don't worry. And this gave me the push to teach him a little lesson. All I did was simply do the job as he asked. I used a tiny, crappy chipper to break down those giant blocks in the blazing heat. Thing is, I never actually finished. The first day, I got through about half of the first block, and came home with my hands and wrists numb. The second day, I came in, my hands and wrists aching like crazy. I know how to survive, and drank as much water as I could, but apparently it wasn't enough. Because while working on the first block, I fainted. Luckily, someone noticed and called an ambulance. I was only out for maybe 10 to 20 seconds, but when I got up, one of the trade workers was on the phone with 911. When they got there, I was treated for severe dehydration and severe tendinitis, as I couldn't move either of my wrists without great pain. I won't give the details of going to the ER, but there was another interesting detail. My boss wasn't on site that day, thinking he didn't need to do anything that day and just hung out at home. Thing is, though, because the ambulance was called, it was one of his primary duties to respond to it, but he wasn't there. This put him in some really hot water with his boss. I don't have all the details about what happened, but I was off the job site for 2 weeks while my wrist recovered, and when I returned there was a new site manager, who just wanted me to clean the site, not break the blocks, which were still there. I'm pretty sure the old site manager was fired, but I don't actually know since I finished working there 5 days later. 5. So we have a terrible postal service in our country, more like a disservice, but I digress. And one of the worst malfunctioning things about it are the office hours, something like 8:30 to 12:30, and nothing else. Should be illegal in my humble opinion. Luckily, one of our offices near me is just a few minutes' drive away and closes after my work hours. The only problem is they're very strict about their time rules. So one day I have to check in Amazon Return. They close at 7:05, and the ticket machine is deadlocked. I'm told that if you have a ticket and entered before closing time, you'll get served. If you don't have a ticket, you don't. Even though I was the last person in line and I only had a 2-minute job to do. Seems like no exception to their time rules. Cue malicious compliance. The following day, I get to the same office, this time at like 10 to 7 p.m. Take my sweet time, no rush or anything to get there on time. And when I arrive there, there is just one person in line. Perfect. After just a couple of minutes, realizing that just one person could get in that night, since, well, postal service laziness, inability, and minimum age to get hired, 65, and if you know how to use a photocopy machine and printer, we don't want you, I guess. So I tell the lady in front of me to just get in, get a ticket, and continue to wait outside, as per anti-spreading rules, explaining to her why. She thanked me for the info, does it, then I do the same. This time, though, it's a kid with a grin behind his mask instead of a lady. So this guy Bob, the male Karen, also the same guy who explained the ticket system the day before, thinks it's a good idea to start screaming. This is roughly the conversation that ensued. "Hey, we're closed! You can't just take a ticket and go outside!" Why can't I? Where does it state that? And most importantly, it's 18:59, you're still not closed. "I don't care, we're closed! We'll not be serving any more customers!" By this point, the poor lady, who could have made it in time, just looks defeated and starts walking away, trashing her ticket, but let's continue. "Listen, kid, I repeat it again, you won't be served tonight. We're already closed." Couldn't care less. I'll still wait outside, and I'll be the last person that'll go home. Just a few more minutes go by. It's now 7:03. One person leaves the building. I get in. Bob, as soon as I walk through the door, says, "Didn't you listen before? I said we're closed, we won't serve you." I have ears. And a watch. It's 7:04, and I have my ticket. "I know why you're here so late. It's because you young people are lazy and want to do nothing all day. If you cared so much, you would come in the morning instead of sleeping." You seem to know too much about other people's business and too little about yours. You're not my affair, you don't live with me or sleep with me. You know nothing about me. I have a driver's license, I work 9 to 1, and 2 to 6. Now mind your own business. Bear in mind that this dude is talking very loudly at all times. Meanwhile, by this point, the office manager gets out of her cubicle or something, I don't know where they hide when you need them to complain.
Listen, you need to go out. You need to respect the rules.
At least they're not shouting. I do, ma'am. I respect the rules. Everybody else does.
No, you're not. We're closed, and we're too much in this room. You need to go out.
So you don't listen when other people talk then. Pay more attention next time. I said I respect the same rules as everybody else. You were 6 people before. 1 person went out. I came in. This building allows only 4. You were in technical violation before. You are after. I didn't technically break any rules myself, and the guy that went out didn't re-establish any equilibrium. And we're all still correctly social distancing. Also, I'll repeat again, since from the outside you can see how many people were already in, and I entered the office at 7:04. My ticket is still perfectly valid. Go watch the security footage if you don't believe me.
I don't care. You need to go out or I'll call the police.
Go ahead. I'll bring the 5th person in the office out with me then. And by the time they show up, we'll all have been at home for quite some time anyway. The manager stomps off to her cubicle again. Meanwhile, it's 2 turns before mine. The guy commands the software to proceed, thinking I'll be the last he'll never call. Now it's the turn before mine, but nobody showed up at the desk. Remember the lady? Now Bob commands another to proceed, and lo and behold, he calls the letters and packages queue. It's my turn now.
You don't know respect, do you? You've shown up in the end.
No, for people who don't show respect first, I don't show respect, but I know how to follow the rules. Unlike you, mister. I mind my own business and I follow them. Now what? Do you want to pathetically skip a number so you could serve the other girl in the general issues queue? Bob is visibly pissed, but he has no more argument.
Do you want to send this package out or not?
Sure thing, here you go. All yours. Like your job now. Here's your receipt. Thank you. Have a nice day. As I leave, I hear incomprehensible muttering and gibberish from Bob. I just smile. Meanwhile, the other girl is still at the desk. The guy worked 1 to 2 minutes less. Bonus part, but not directly malicious compliance, but still related and funny. The next time around I needed to go to the office, by 6:45, mind you, because, you know, I do have a job. After some time waiting, I hear this invisible dude behind a cement column rudely ask a customer why he was watching him. Mr. Male Karen doesn't mind his own business loudly, and as always replies that he's getting nervous from the customer watching him, and that he doesn't like being watched. Dude, you're behind a desk in front of the customer every day, all day long. You chose this job, what's wrong with you? Meanwhile, me whispering to the pretty girl next to me, oh, I recognize this voice. It's the stupid guy from the last time. And I briefly explain what happened in my previous encounter with this wild Pokemon. We both got quite a good laugh about it. Hey everybody, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to Revenge is Ice Cream, episode 114. And thank you very much to everybody who allowed me to use their stories in this video. If you enjoyed the video, then please do share the video on all your social medias. That helps get the word out. That is very helpful to me. And if you haven't done so already, please do like, subscribe, and comment. Okay, what day is this? Let's see. This will go up on Wednesday, I think. That'll be the 19th. 19th already. Yep. Well, it might be midweek, but make sure you're taking time to relax and take care of yourself, eh? I, for one, when I'm done working today, I'm going to hopefully finally get round to making a proper dinner and watching that Eternals film. Still haven't gotten round to it. Or I might play some video games. I've been thinking of the Batman Arkham games lately, and I've not played those for a while. Anyway, with that, I'm going to head off for now. So until next time, thank you very much for listening, and take very good care of yourself.